My wife, Charlotte Price, was only interested in my family's connections and resources. She married me, even though I was mute. I knew she was disgusted by me. Funny thing is, the feeling was mutual. I despised her and her entire family. I might not have a voice, but every single day, I'd stand right in front of them and tear them to shreds in my mind. What I didn't know back then was that she could hear every word. It wasn't until I got my test results back from the doctor. I thought to myself, bitterly, I guess only the good die young. Charlotte, you win. I'm going to die before you. And in that moment, for the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine panic on her perpetually composed face. When I was born mute, my parents worried themselves sick over who I'd marry. But we were the Walkers of Walker Industries. The family fortune meant I'd never have a shortage of suitors. I'd always imagined I'd find someone kind and gentle to spend my life with. I never expected my family to arrange a match with Charlotte Price, the eldest daughter of the Price family. I remember when I heard the news, I gestured so frantically I nearly threw my shoulder out. Charlotte and I were sworn enemies. Besides, she had a long-term boyfriend, her childhood sweetheart. What was I, some kind of villain wedging himself between them? All I wanted was a quiet life. I had no interest in being dragged into their drama. But I was mute. No one cared what I thought. And just like that, with the blessing of our families, Charlotte and I were married. At the reception, I stood beside her with a face like thunder. She, at least, wasn't pretending to be happy either. The two of us stood there, stone-faced, accepting congratulations from our guests. That is, until Liam Carter showed up. A hint of a smile finally broke through the ice on Charlotte's face. Fucking disgusting. Dressed like he's the groom. Anyone who didn't know better would think it was his wedding day. I see that internally, cursing him out. Suddenly, Charlotte turned to me, her eyes flashing a warning. I had no idea what was happening. I gave her a questioning look. She shot me another glare, her voice low and laced with anger. Show some respect. That was a laugh. I was mute. What could I have possibly said? I kept right on cursing Liam in my head, throwing Charlotte in for good measure. On the outside, I feigned serene ignorance, signing to her. What is it? What happened? Charlotte's face darkened. Ethan, she said, her words clipped and precise. Are you insulting us in your head? Holy shit, can this woman read minds? I glanced at her out of the corner of my eye. Is this a scene out of a novel? She can actually read my mind? My mind was racing, but my expression remained one of pure confusion. I dare you, I thought, challenging her. I double dare you to announce what I'm thinking in front of all these people. Confident she wouldn't make a scene, I let loose, internally savaging her, Liam, and the entire Price family. Ethan, the truth always comes out. Charlotte snapped, then turned on her heel and dragged Liam off to make the rounds with some business moguls. Watching them, you'd never guess it was my wedding day and not theirs. Two in the reception finally wound down. The way Liam clung to Charlotte was pathetic. He might as well have had it tattooed on his forehead. Charlotte's parents were at the door, seeing guests off. When they saw the two of them acting all lovey-dovey, they didn't say a word. In fact, her mom just smiled and gently steered me away. Ethan, they haven't seen each other in a while. Let's give them a moment to catch up. We can wait in the car. I nodded with a polite smile. Inside my head, like mother, like daughter. A shameless daughter comes from a shameless mother. Charlotte's expression went rigid. I noticed her face fall, but I just assumed she was annoyed that I was walking too slowly. The whole mind-reading thing still seemed too insane to be real. As I waved goodbye to her, I threw in a silent jab at her father for good measure. And the idiot's father is an idiot, too. Charlotte flinched. Her mom and I waited in the car for over half an hour before Charlotte and her dad finally sauntered over. Mom, Ethan and I are going back to our place, she announced. Oh, her mom looked surprised and was about to ask more, but a look from her husband silenced her. She recovered quickly, a knowing smirk spreading across her face. Okay, you two go on home. The second I was out of their car, it sped off. Charlotte just stood there on the curb, making no move toward our new home. I looked at her, puzzled. It's not just Liam you have a problem with, she stated, her voice flat. You have a problem with my parents, too? How did she know every single person I was cursing out of my head? My look of confusion deepened, but Charlotte didn't explain her ability. She just gave me a cold warning. Don't you dare give Liam a hard time. He was heartbroken when I broke up with him. How heartbroken? He probably cried for all of 2 minutes before telling her, with deep sincerity, "Even if you marry someone else, I'll wait for you forever." Liam had shown up to my wedding dress to the nines and had even posted on his Instagram story, wearing a suit, standing in the same room as you. Does that count as being your groom? That post was now pinned to the top of his profile. It was a blazing testament to his love for Charlotte and the ultimate humiliation for me. Based on that alone, wouldn't I be justified in giving him a hard time? But here was Charlotte, warning me on his behalf. I let out a cold laugh in my mind and let it rip. If you two were so in love, why don't you have the guts to ask me for a divorce? If it wasn't for my mom, I never would have married you. You, of all people, have a nerve to look down on me for being mute. You're a dumbass. You might have a voice, but it's not like you ever say anything worth hearing. Ethan. Charlotte, unable to take it anymore, bit out my name. The sudden shout startled me out of my internal tirade. I just looked at her, my expression asking, "What? Did you just call me a dumbass?" Even though it was the truth, getting caught red-handed like that was profoundly embarrassing. I used sign language to ask her, "How did you know I called you a dumbass?" Charlotte was speechless. She clearly didn't want to reveal her secret, so she scrambled for an excuse. "It's written all over your face." My face, apparently, was capable of hurling some pretty foul insults. I touched my cheek, bewildered, finding it hard to believe my poker face had gotten so bad. I forced a sincere smile and signed, "I didn't call you a dumbass." Charlotte closed her eyes, looking like she was suffering from internal injuries caused by my sheer audacity, yet completely helpless. I pretended not to notice and turned, heading for the car myself. But my mood was as dark and endless as the night sky, with no glimmer of light in sight. I always knew Charlotte married me for the money. She was repulsed by the fact that I couldn't speak. Luckily, I didn't like her either. For the past year we'd been together, every ounce of my patience was an act. The doctors had told me my mom didn't have much time left, maybe 3 months. I didn't want her to have any more worries in her final days. Even though I hated Charlotte, even though I never wanted this marriage, I could put up with it for my mom. But it seemed fate had other plans for me. My own test came back. It was cancer. My mom's doctor, who had been treating her for years, was more devastated than I was. "Ethan, you're so young. How could this happen?" I was sad, of course, but at the same time, a strange sense of relief washed over me. If I died too, I could be with my mom again. That sounded pretty good. For I stayed at the hospital that night. Late, a call came through from an unknown number. It was one of Charlotte's friends. "Ethan, it's Sophie. Charlotte's really drunk. Can you come pick her up?" Someone in the background hissed, "Are you an idiot? He's mute. He can't talk. How is he supposed to answer you?" "Oh, right," Sophie said, her tone tinged with embarrassment. "Sorry about that, Ethan. Can you just shoot me a text if you can come get her?" My first instinct was to ignore it, but maybe because I knew I was dying, all the desires I had suppressed for so long suddenly came rushing to the surface. I wanted to divorce Charlotte as soon as possible. She'd probably agree. But now there was a mandatory 1-month cooling-off period. A month wasn't long, but to me, it was priceless. I wanted to be completely free of Charlotte before I died. That way, I wouldn't have to be a ghost in the Walker family crypt. So I went. I picked Charlotte up and brought her home. She was so drunk, she just collapsed onto the sofa. Usually, at times like this, I would have gone to the kitchen to get her some water and aspirin. I'd help her change and get her into bed. But tonight, I just sat there quietly. I was waiting for her to sober up so I could tell her I wanted a divorce. Charlotte had been pampered her whole life, and I had taken good care of her since we married. After just a few minutes on the couch, she started to get uncomfortable, sitting up with a frown. I watched her, my gaze steady. My stare must have been colder than usual, because when our eyes met, she froze, and some of the drunkenness seemed to evaporate. "What are you staring at me for?" she asked, annoyed. I signed to her. "Let's get a divorce." Charlotte didn't understand. In the year we'd lived together, she had made little effort to get to know me. She couldn't comprehend any but the simplest, most common signs. She had never bothered to learn. A cold smirk formed in my mind. Communicating with an idiot is exhausting. Charlotte's face tightened. I pulled out my phone and typed out the words for her. Still hazy from the alcohol, Charlotte stared at the screen, confused. A divorce. Who's getting a divorce? I pointed at her, then at myself. This time she got it, but she couldn't believe it. That I, a mute, would dare to ask her for a divorce. She laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. You don't actually think that if you divorce me, there will be a line of women waiting to be your next wife, do you? I shook my head, but my gaze remained firm. This only made her angrier. Fine. You want a divorce, I agree. But all the terms of our original agreement stand. My family keeps the capital injection from yours. None of it gets returned. I nodded. I consider it the price I paid for my mother's peace of mind over the last year. It was a steep price, but the deal was done. There was no sense in trying to get a refund. Charlotte was utterly baffled by my easy agreement. Her speech slowed. Ethan, why the sudden change? Why do you want a divorce now? That was the question she should have asked first. If she had even an ounce of affection for me. But because she didn't love me, her first reaction was anger, followed only later by curiosity. I didn't answer, just gave her a small, empty smile. As I stood to leave, she grabbed my wrist. Why do you suddenly need this divorce? She repeated, her grip tight. The financial loss would be huge for her family, and I was offering no reason. She was used to being the center of everyone's universe. She couldn't accept being dumped by a mute. But if she just thought about it for a second, she should have been thrilled. With a divorce, she could be with Liam openly and without shame. A wedding, a proper title, everything Liam wanted, she could finally give him. It was perfect for them. I remember when the Walker family first approached the Prices about our marriage. I had briefly considered trying to make a real life with Charlotte. Even without love, a peaceful, respectful coexistence would have been enough. Outsiders only saw our family's immense wealth now. They didn't know that after my father died, my mother and I were nearly destroyed by our rivals. My mom constantly worried no one would want me, and that I would be mistreated in a marriage. So she gave everything to help the Price family, to support Charlotte, all in the hope that my married life would be a little bit happier. But on my own wedding day, I was thoroughly humiliated. I had tried talking to Charlotte about it, asking if she could get Liam to take down that pinned Instagram post. Her response was dismissive. What other people post is their business. Who are you to tell them what to do? And what I do or don't do is my freedom. Don't try to control me. It was in that moment that I realized someone like Charlotte wasn't even capable of a civil, respectful marriage with me. After that, I never bothered her about anything again. But in her eyes, my very existence was a constraint on her freedom. Thank God that constraint was about to be removed. Charlotte, I'm dying. You're finally free. As the thought crossed my mind, her hand on my wrist suddenly went limp. Her eyes were wide with shock, but I didn't know she'd heard me. I was just relieved she had stopped demanding a reason for the divorce, saving me the trouble of explaining. She didn't love me, didn't care about me. Why would she care if I lived or died? Saying more would just be pathetic. I turned and walked away, heading up the stairs to the bedroom. With every step, a sigh echoed in my mind. Such a beautiful face. If she had a decent personality to match, she'd be unstoppable. Liam can't love her that much either. Otherwise, how could he let her carry the shame of cheating on her husband? I guess they deserve each other. At least after ruining me, they won't go on to ruin anyone else. It's just, what a shame, to have walked this earth and never known what it felt like to be loved. If I had met someone better, maybe I could have experienced it just once. Charlotte didn't deserve it. After I went to bed, Charlotte left to meet up with her friend, Sophie. Sophie had known her forever and could tell something was wrong just by looking at her. Charlotte smelled heavily of alcohol, and her clothes were a mess. Fight with Ethan? Sophie asked. Charlotte shot her a glare. She was annoyed that Sophie was right, and also annoyed that she was wrong. Asking for a divorce was a lot more serious than a fight. And Ethan was sick. It seemed serious. Charlotte grabbed the glass in front of her and downed it in one go. But instead of the familiar burn of alcohol, she tasted only fragrant tea. She'd forgotten they were drinking tea, not cocktails. When did you quit drinking? Charlotte asked. It wasn't sudden. It's been 2 years, Sophie said. But 2 years ago, when you quit, it was sudden. Sophie didn't answer. Charlotte pressed on. If I remember correctly, you quit because of Noah, right? Did he really have that much of an impact on you? Sophie gave her a look. Why are you so chatty over a cup of tea? Charlotte scoffed and looked down. After a long silence, Sophie spoke again. The impact was huge. When he disappeared, it felt like my life was over. But when he was around, it's not like you treasured him, Charlotte pointed out. Exactly. So you have to cherish what you have before it's gone. You too. In their friend group, Sophie was the unofficial leader, but she rarely lectured anyone, especially about relationships. Tonight, maybe because they were both miserable, the conversation flowed more freely. Charlotte, what's the real deal with you, Ethan and Liam? With Liam, it's been over for a long time. It's just, the breakup was so abrupt, and he took it hard. I feel guilty, like I owe him something. And Ethan, Charlotte paused, unable to find the right words. It was Sophie who guessed. You used him? Grew on you over time? Something like that, Charlotte admitted. It was only after Ethan had asked for a divorce that she'd belatedly realized how terrifying a force of habit could be. In that split second, the image of coming home to an empty apartment flashed through her mind, filling her with a strange sense of dread. Since you're over your ex, Sophie advised, don't hurt the person who's with you now. Why are you suddenly so full of advice? Because I lost him. Listen to me, Sophie said seriously. Be good to Ethan, or you will regret it. Charlotte sneered. Regret it? My ass. Sophie just laughed coldly. I hope you can keep that attitude forever. The next morning, I woke up and Charlotte was gone. I sent her a text. Where are you? No reply. A little while later, I heard a noise at the front door. I figured it was Charlotte, back to go to the courthouse. We had agreed on the divorce last night, after all. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Charlotte. It was Liam. He'd never been friendly to me. With Charlotte gone, his contempt was undisguised. We need to talk. He smirked. Oh, right. I forgot. You're mute. He was just like Charlotte, blessed with the ability to speak, but incapable of saying anything humane. But I was curious what he wanted to talk about, and on what authority. I stepped aside, gesturing for him to come in. Liam raised an eyebrow in surprise, then walked in and sat on the couch. I grabbed a pen and paper to communicate with him. A guest is here, he said condescendingly. Aren't you going to get me a glass of water? He was no guest of mine. If I actually loved Charlotte, he'd be the enemy. I smiled and wrote, just say what you have to say. Don't waste my time. Liam sneered. What? You think marrying Charlotte means you're set for life? You two will get a divorce sooner or later. It's your Charlotte who married me to secure her family's cushy life for a little while longer. If my family hadn't invested, the Prices would have gone bankrupt. Even though they had recovered, they wouldn't dare kick me to the curb. If I hadn't asked for a divorce, Charlotte probably would have stayed with me forever. What did Liam think he was? I gave him a cold, level look. No confrontation, no harsh words. The power dynamic was clear in that single glance. Liam, enraged, shot to his feet. You think you're hot stuff because you have some money. You can have all the money in the world, but you'll still be a mute, he spat. I asked Charlotte, you've been married for over a year, and she's never let you touch her. Even if you don't get a divorce, you'll never have children. Your father's dead, your mother's dying, and when you die, everything you have will be. Slap. The sharp crack of my hand across his face echoed through the living room. Liam staggered back and fell onto the sofa. He clutched his face, stunned, unable to get up for a long moment. I had hit him hard. My own palm was stinging, but he had brought up my parents. He wanted Charlotte. He could have her, but bringing my family into it, talking about death, he deserved it. When Liam finally recovered, he started screaming curses at me. He wanted to hit back, but just then we heard a key in the door. He knew Charlotte was home. It was time for his master performance of victimhood. Charlotte didn't disappoint him. The moment she walked in and saw the red handprint on his face, she whirled on me. Ethan, what did you do? Here we go again. I lost count of how many times this scene had played out. Sometimes I felt like I was just a prop in their illicit affair, a tool to make it more exciting for them. But today I was done playing. I turned, picked up my phone, unlocked it, and hit play on a recording. It was a compilation of every time Liam and I had been alone together. All his taunts, his insults, his verbal abuse. The vile words, punctuated by his sneering laughter, flowed smoothly from my phone speaker. Liam froze. Charlotte froze. Before the recording was even finished, Liam snapped out of it and lunged for my phone. Liam. Charlotte's voice was like ice, her fury tightly controlled. He looked at her in a panic, desperately trying to lie his way out. Charlotte, that's not me. He faked it. He's framing me. Charlotte closed her eyes. Get out. Charlotte, get out. Don't make me say it a third time. Liam bit his lip, fat tears rolling down his cheeks. He was a truly gifted actor. If he ever went into show business, he could probably win an Oscar. After Liam left, Charlotte saw my cold expression and for once spoke softly. Ethan, we need to talk. She used the exact same words as Liam. I hated it even more. I let out a small, cold laugh and wrote on the notepad. There's nothing to talk about except the divorce. I went to the hospital this morning to see your mom. In over a year of marriage, this was the first time she had gone to see my mother alone. And it was right after I'd asked for a divorce. I wasn't surprised. I was disgusted. I agreed to all your terms. Why are you bothering my mom? Your mom doesn't know you're sick, does she? How did she know I was sick? I shot to my feet, my carefully constructed composure shattering. Charlotte met my gaze, her eyes fixed on mine. You don't need to write anymore, she said, each word deliberate. I can hear what you're thinking. This wasn't just shocking. It was reality-altering. No wonder she confronted me every time I'd cursed her, her parents, or Liam. She had heard every single word, loud and clear. Since when? When did this start? 6 months ago. The night you came back from the hospital. That was the night my mother's condition took a sudden turn for the worse. The doctor said there was one more experimental treatment they could try, but the chances of success were low. After my mom fell asleep that night, I sat by her bed until 2 in the morning. The caregiver, who had already gone home, suddenly returned to the hospital. She took my hand and said, Ethan, I was worried about you. A stranger, someone paid to do a job, had climbed out of her warm bed in the middle of the night simply because she was worried about me. And Charlotte? That night, she was out getting wasted. With Liam. He'd even posted about their wild night on his Instagram. They were celebrating. I was in agony, unable to even cry out loud. I never would have guessed that was the night Charlotte developed her ability. When I got home at 4 in the morning, she had just arrived herself. I remember she mumbled something about my sour expression. I was so distraught at the time, I assumed she was complaining that I hadn't been there to take care of her drunk ass. Only now did I learn the truth. She had seen how terrible I looked and had asked me what was wrong. I had ignored her, but in that instant, she heard my thoughts. Why did my mom have to get sick? Charlotte is such a terrible person. She should be the one who's sick. She's the one who should die. Charlotte fell silent. At first, she said she couldn't believe she was hearing my thoughts. But as it happened again and again, she slowly got used to it. And my thoughts were almost always the opposite of my actions. I'd be smiling on the outside, but internally, I was a volcano of rage. 8 out of 10 thoughts were curses aimed at her. The other 2 were reserved for her parents and Liam. I always thought you were just a petty person, she confessed. I thought you couldn't stand that Liam and I were still friends after we broke up, so you were always secretly cursing him. I had no idea he was saying those things to you, too. He'd said much worse, and much more often. But neither she nor Liam had ever imagined I'd be recording him. I'd recorded every single time. I hadn't planned on using it to expose him. It was just an insurance policy, something to have in case things got ugly. But Liam had practically gift-wrapped the opportunity. It would have been a waste not to take it. I stared at her coldly and asked with my thoughts, so now you know? What next? Charlotte bit her lip, hesitating. She didn't want to talk about Liam, and I didn't force her. I changed the subject. When are we going to the courthouse to sign the papers? Ethan, you need to focus on your treatment. What I do or don't do is none of your business. I threw her own words back at her. Without waiting for a reaction, I stood up and walked away. Ethan, where are you going? She called after me. None of your business, you dumbass. Charlotte was left speechless. I went to the hospital. The caregiver saw me and greeted me with a smile. Ms. Price was here this morning. I nodded. Seeing I wasn't surprised, she asked softly, Are you too? Doing better now. I shook my head and pulled out my phone, typing, Weary, getting a divorce. The caregiver gasped and squeezed my hand. Was it her idea? No, it was mine. I was the one leaving Charlotte. Even if the world saw her as beautiful and brilliant, she didn't love me, didn't care for me. So I didn't want her. The caregiver saw the resolve in my eyes and seemed to understand. Her voice filled with pity. What will you do now? My father was long gone. My mother was about to leave me, and I was gravely ill myself. All the money in the world couldn't buy me a single person who truly cared. The caregiver looked even sadder than I felt, her eyes welling up. I looked down, unable to meet her gaze. I was afraid if I did, the tears would start, and my crying was silent. A silent agony, a boomerang that flew out with my tears only to circle back and stab me in the heart. I knew that feeling all too well. It was a pain so intense it made you wish for instant death. The caregiver told me Charlotte had spoken with my mom alone for a long time that morning. After Charlotte left, my mom had been quietly wiping away tears. The caregiver hadn't dared to ask why, for fear of upsetting her more. But I needed to know. I typed on my phone and showed it to my mom. What did Charlotte say to you this morning? What could she say? Mom smiled brightly. She said you two have been getting closer lately, and that I should get ready for grandchildren. She's lying. Why would you say that? Mom gave me a gentle, scolding look. Haven't you always told me how good Charlotte is to you? Those were all lies I had invented. To make them more believable, I even bought myself gifts and pretended they were from Charlotte. In my mother's eyes, Charlotte was a bit busy, but she was good to me. Now, I had to tear down my own carefully constructed facade. Mom, Charlotte and I are getting a divorce. My mother wasn't shocked, just slightly surprised. She asked gently, did she hurt you? She loves someone else. Not me. I see. My mother reached out and pulled me into a hug, the calm she had been forcing finally shattering. Her voice broke. Our Ethan is so wonderful. If she doesn't love you, it's her loss. She sobbed. It must have been so hard for you, my boy, putting up with it for so long just for my sake. I shook my head. It wasn't hard. Charlotte's affair with Liam didn't hurt me because I didn't love her. It was just pathetic. The only thing that hurt was that I didn't ask for a divorce sooner, didn't tell my mom the truth earlier. Now, my mother had to hear from Charlotte's own lips that she didn't love me. I can only imagine how devastated my mom must have been when Charlotte said those words. Her own treasured son, rejected so callously. My mom cried, and I cried with her. But through her tears, she tried to comfort me. It's okay, Ethan. You're such a good man. You'll find someone so much better. Let that Price woman live with her regret. I smiled and nodded, but I knew the truth. Charlotte would never regret it. And for me, there was no later. Charlotte, likely worried about the financial implications, kept delaying the divorce. I texted her several times, but she'd either say she was busy or just not reply. At my wit's end, I told her parents. They exploded. We've always turned a blind eye to your business with Liam, but you need to have some discretion. You can't push Ethan to his breaking point, her father yelled over the phone. If he takes this public with his situation, a mute from a single-parent home, the public's sympathy will be entirely with him. It will ruin your reputation and tank the company's stock price, her mother added. Go apologize to Ethan right now. I don't care what you have to do. You cannot get a divorce. After tearing into Charlotte, they came to the hospital, bearing gifts and playing the sympathy card with me. They told my mom how thrilled they were with me as a son-in-law. Whatever Charlotte did wrong, we'll talk to her, make sure she corrects her behavior. Ethan, you can't just ask for a divorce because you're angry. That's the most damaging thing you can say in a marriage. Feelings? What feelings? Were there ever any feelings between me and that moron Charlotte? Just as the thought crossed my mind, Charlotte herself walked into the room, hearing every word. Her face darkened. I looked at her with wide-eyed innocence and added a silent postscript. A complete moron. It didn't matter how much I insulted her. To her parents, I was the wrong party. Charlotte, unable to argue, pulled me out into the hallway. I can agree to anything, she said, her voice tight, except the divorce. Even if I had a mistress, you'd be okay with that. Ethan, let's just get this over with. At least let me have some peace before I die. Do you hate me that much? I was genuinely surprised she would ask that. Her expression was dead serious. Ethan, she said, her voice softer. Can we try again? For real this time? I think her parents must have driven her insane. Otherwise, why would she say something so crazy? Was there ever a start for us? If we never began, how could we try again? In my mind, I spelled it out for her, carefully and deliberately. Charlotte, I have never, not once, liked you. Even at the very beginning, all I wanted was a peaceful life. It had nothing to do with love. While I'm still willing to do this amicably, let's go sign the papers. If you drag this out any longer, I have no problem filing a suit and taking this public. When things got messy, it wouldn't just be my reputation on the line. Charlotte was so angry, she let out a series of cold, sharp laughs. Ethan, she seethed, I really underestimated you. You're too kind. Just as Charlotte looked like she was about to explode, the caregiver came rushing down the hall, calling my name. Ethan. I looked up and met her panicked gaze. My stomach dropped. A terrible premonition spread through me like ripples in a pond. Get back to the room quickly, she urged. It's your mother. She's not going to make it. She's asking for you. A thunderclap seemed to go off in my head, leaving only a deafening buzz. The caregiver had to practically drag me down the hall and back to the room. Doctors and nurses were crowded around the bed. Charlotte's parents looked anxious. Her mother even tried to comfort me. Ethan, don't worry. We'll find the best doctors. We'll save your mom. She couldn't be saved. Our family had enough money to buy any drug, hire any specialist. But we couldn't buy life. After a series of checks, one of the doctors turned and gave us a helpless shake of his head. In that moment, I felt something inside me quietly break. The medical staff parted, and I saw my mom reaching for me. I moved forward mechanically, my hand trembling as I took hers. Ethan. Her voice was a faint whisper, thin as thread. Mommy's leaving now. Don't cry. I wanted to listen to her, to let her go in peace. But my tear ducts had a mind of their own. The tears just kept coming. She tried to lift her other hand to wipe them away, but she was too weak. It rose an inch before falling back to the bed. Ethan, don't cry. I nodded frantically, my mouth open, try to force a sound. I remembered, I could make sounds when I was a child. I had called for my dad from my mom. If I could just call her mom one more time, maybe there would be one less regret. But I couldn't. No matter how wide I opened my mouth, no sound came out. It was Charlotte who stepped forward and whispered to my mom. He wants to call you, Mom. A light flickered in my mother's cloudy eyes. She smiled and nodded at me. Mommy heard you. Then, she gestured for everyone else to leave, keeping only me and Charlotte in the room. I thought she was going to ask Charlotte to take care of me. Instead, she took Charlotte's hand and, in a pleading whisper, asked, will you please agree to divorce Ethan? Charlotte froze, her eyes darting to my face. My tears stopped abruptly. I pressed a hand to my chest. It ached a deep, hollow pain, as if something inside had finally shattered completely. Before, my mom had worried about me being alone after she was gone, so she wanted someone to take care of me. Now, she was worried I would be hurt after she was gone, so she was begging Charlotte to set me free. Will you agree to divorce him, please? Whether it was the weight of a dying woman's plea or a pang of conscience, Charlotte finally, quietly, agreed. My mother let out a sigh of relief. She stroked my head. Ethan, from now on, be yourself. Be happy. Okay, Mommy is going to find Daddy now. You come find us later. You can be our child again in the next life. Okay, Ethan. In her final moment, I pulled my mother into my arms. She passed away right there in my embrace. I held her hand, feeling the last of her life slip away. Mom, I think I have to disobey you one last time. I'm coming to find you and Dad very soon. When I woke up, I was in a hospital room. Charlotte was sitting by the bed. I had no idea how much time had passed. As I started to move, Charlotte spoke quickly. Your mom's funeral arrangements have been taken care of. Don't worry. Get out. The single, sharp thought made her flinch. She bit back her temper. Ethan, I promised your mother I would divorce you. Can you please try to dial back the hatred for a minute? I can't. Not unless you die. Charlotte was silenced. The conversation was over. She got up and went outside to smoke a cigarette and compose herself. When she came back, she saw me furiously typing on my phone. Sensing something was wrong, she lunged and snatched the phone out of my hands. She read what I'd written, her eyes widening in disbelief. Ethan, do you really have to do this? I told you. If you won't agree to the divorce, I have no problem taking this public. I was preparing to release a public statement about our divorce. I didn't care if it destroyed Charlotte's reputation or cratered her family's company stock. I was dying. Why should I care about anyone else? Charlotte stared at me for a long time, seeing no hint of compromise in my eyes. Finally, with a sigh of utter defeat, she said, Ethan, I already told your mother I would divorce you. Don't you dare mention my mother. If you hadn't gone to the hospital and told her you didn't love me, the shock wouldn't have killed her so quickly. Charlotte looked stunned. I never said that, she explained. I didn't say that. I went to the hospital to find out about your condition. Since I was there, I figured I would see your mom. I didn't say anything like that. My mother was just too smart. She had pieced it together from Charlotte's words and actions. It was my fault, Charlotte apologized. I should have talked to you first. If she had, we could have gotten our story straight. My mom wouldn't have been able to pry the truth out of her. My heart was full of resentment, but thinking it over, I realized all the blame lay with me. If I had just admitted I didn't like Charlotte from the start, if I hadn't swallowed my pride on my wedding day. So many what-ifs. I was so tired. 16. The Price family had wanted a grand funeral for my mother. I insisted on a simple, private service. After she was buried, I moved back to my own house. Tabloid reporters followed Charlotte, photographing her several times standing outside my building, never going in. Rumors started to fly that our families had a falling out and a divorce was imminent. The speculation caused the Price Corporation's stock to dip. Charlotte's parents came to see me, begging me to move back in with her. Ethan, you have to consider our position too. Honestly, Charlotte has done nothing to wrong you. If her company collapses, what good does that do you? All this drama you're causing. Mom, Charlotte rushed in, cutting her mother off. You and Dad should go home. Her parents stood their ground, their faces cold and stubborn. Charlotte glanced at me. I sat perfectly still, not moving a muscle. My mind was silent. There were no thoughts. A flicker of fear crossed her face. She came over to me. Ethan, she asked softly, how about I take you out for a walk? Since moving back, I hadn't left the house in over 2 weeks. I was the only person in this massive, empty building. I couldn't speak. There was no one to speak to me. I was letting myself sink into the silent world, deeper and deeper. 17. Ignoring her parents, Charlotte took me outside. Once we were in the car, she asked, is there anywhere you want to go? I looked at the sunlight outside, so bright and fierce. The blood in my veins, which had felt all but frozen, seemed to stir. I answered with my thoughts. I want to go to the mall. Charlotte nodded. She knew I wasn't in the mood for shopping, but she did as I asked. I bought a well-tailored suit. Charlotte slowly began to understand. I wanted to look my best when I went to see my parents. We arrived at the cemetery just as the sun was setting. The brilliant colors of the twilight sky cast a golden glow on the headstones. I stood before their graves and did a slow turn. I asked in my mind, Mom, Dad, do I look nice today? Do I look like I did at my birthday party when I was little? You were both there, and I was wearing a little tuxedo. If I come to you like this, you'll recognize me, right? Being alive by myself is so tiring. I miss you so much. Charlotte stood right behind me, hearing every word. I didn't care. At this point, nothing mattered anymore. But Charlotte refused to accept that. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me from behind. Her voice was hoarse, as if she were fighting back powerful emotions. Ethan, the hospital called. They found a match. A perfect match. You just need the transplant surgery, and you can live a long, healthy life. There's no need. But you said you didn't want to be a ghost tied to my family, right? I had the hospital schedule the surgery for a month from now. We can go to the courthouse first, get the divorce papers. By the time you're out of surgery, you'll have the certificate in hand. You'll be free. It was a tempting offer. Before my mother died, I would have accepted without hesitation. But now, I had no desire to keep living. The physical pain was one thing, but the pain in my heart felt like it was consuming me. Charlotte, I'm tired. Then I'm begging you, please agree to the surgery. I just shook my head. A single cold drop landed on my neck, then another. Charlotte's voice grew even more ragged. Your parents, they would want you to live. Do it for them, not for me, okay? We can get the divorce certificate first, and then you can go into the operating room. Ethan, okay. 18. The day we got our divorce certificate, Charlotte seemed to be in a good mood. She was wearing a new dress. She looked down at the small booklet in her hand, then looked up at me. Let me take you to the hospital. I shook my head, but she insisted. We had a deal. Divorce certificate, then surgery. I need to see you walk through those doors myself. What if you run off? I didn't argue. For some reason, I had a strange feeling all day. Even though Charlotte was acting cheerful, there was a heavy, somber energy around her. At the hospital, everything was ready. Charlotte walked with me all the way to the doors of the operating room. Before I went in, she leaned close. Ethan, don't be afraid. Everything is going to be okay. I wasn't afraid at all. In fact, she looked much more scared than I was. Maybe what Sophie said that night finally got through to her. Maybe, over time, something like love really had grown. But it was too late. It was all too late. The surgery was a success. Before I was discharged, a lawyer from the Price Corporation came to see me with some documents to sign. It was a settlement. After the divorce, Charlotte had insisted on compensating me. It amounted to about half of my family's initial investment in her company. The lawyer said it was the absolute most she could afford to give. Charlotte never appeared. For a long, long time after that, she was absent, not just from my life, but from the public eye entirely. Her parents became much more low profile, dodging any questions from the media about their daughter. I liquidated my assets, converting my family's fortune into a single bank account. And then I left. The weather was terrible that day, a relentless, dreary rain. I stood at the airport, watching the downpour through the glass wall, when I saw a familiar figure in the reflection. But when I turned around, the bustling crowd was full of strangers, all hurrying toward their own better futures, with no time to look back. 2 years later, on New Year's Day, Charlotte, who hadn't been seen in years, posted on her social media, "Happy New Year." The accompanying picture was of an airport terminal, but the photo was empty, just glass and steel with no people in it. No one seemed to know who she was wishing a Happy New Year to. And yet, somehow, everyone knew. The post received thousands of likes, but not a single comment. After posting it, Charlotte was about to put her phone down when an unknown number called. The caller ID showed it was an international call. When she answered, there was a long silence on the other end. Then a voice, "Happy New Year." It wasn't a thought. It was a real voice, coming from a throat, clear and resonant. Charlotte didn't reply. The call ended quickly. But that day became the happiest new year of Charlotte's entire life. "Happy New Year," she had said. "Ethan Walker, be happy too."